Hello and welcome to Series 1 of CQC Connect. Welcome to CQC Connect, a podcast by the Care Quality Commission. My name's Stuart Holdsworth. I'm the Commissioning and Quality Manager for the Academy here at the CQC. And today we're joined by Kevin Cleary, who's a Deputy Chief Inspector of Hospitals. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Stuart. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to an interesting discussion on quality and quality improvement.
You are welcome. It's good to have you here. And we're also joined by Faye Gilder, who's a Clinical Director at Cambridge University Hospital's NHS Foundation Trust. Hello and welcome to you, Faye.
Hi, thank you very much. Yep, also delighted to be a part of this podcast.
I'm glad you can make it. And last but no means least, we have another Kevin. Hello and welcome to Kevin Moynes, who's the Executive Director at East Lancashire Hospitals NHS Trust. Hi, Kevin.
Hi. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's great to be here. Thank you.
So in this episode, we'll be talking about our new Sustaining Improvement Report. This is part of our Driving Improvement Report series, in which we spoke to services about how they improved their CQC rating. For this report, we went back to 4 trusts to find out how they then sustained their rating or improved it further. But before we get stuck into the conversation, should we learn a bit about ourselves, your background and what your role involves. So Kevin, you're a newbie here at CQC, 6 months, I think.
That's right.
Detected a twinge of a New Zealand accent there as well.
That's right, yes.
Can you tell us something about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a child and adolescent forensic psychiatrist by background, my training. I spent some time working at the National Patient Safety Agency, and then for 8 years I was Chief Medical Officer at East London Foundation Trust, where I did a lot of work on quality and quality improvement. Went back to New Zealand, had a quality improvement job there, and then returned to this exciting role at CQC.
So as quality improvement and sustaining quality is important for you. It's something
very important. Yeah, very important, Stuart.
And Faye, what about yourself? You're at Cambridge end of the country, aren't you?
Yeah. So I have 2 roles, which are split half time. I'm a consultant anaesthetist with an interest in transplantation, vascular anaesthesia, but also perioperative medicine. And I led our perioperative medicine program for 8 years. Now those roles are split with my current role, which is the Clinical Director for Improvement and Transformation. And in that role, I am co-leading with a colleague the move of our organisation towards a culture of continuous improvement.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And then on to our other Kevin Moynes. Hi, Kevin.
Hi. I'm Director of HR and OD, Organisational Development at East Lancs Hospital Trust. And for the past 15 months, I've been the same, a joint role for Blackpool Foundation Trust. I'm actually a nurse by background. I'm a qualified, revalidated nurse, and I'm quite proud of that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So going back to Kevin Cleary now from the CQC, we've talked about what the Sustaining Improvement Report is. Can you talk to us about some of the key themes that we found through talking to the trusts?
So I think there were some common features in the organisations that do this really well. Quality improvement doesn't happen in a vacuum. Okay, you have to put energy into it. You have to focus relentlessly on quality, or else it becomes something which is very difficult to improve. The trusts that we have spoken to all had formal quality improvement programs in place. They had designed or co-designed a quality improvement program using a methodology which has been shown to deliver, and they all had adhered to that with dogged determination. It's very important that staff have a methodology, have an approach that they can use, and that the whole organisation is coordinated around that. We also know that they were good at evaluating themselves. They were reflective, they thought about what they were doing, they focused on these improvement projects, but also accepted that they weren't going to work immediately. You can make mistakes. Part of that evaluation process is understanding what's working, what's not working, and using that as the basis for the next sort of improvement cycle. they really focused on how they use data. You will go, most NHS organisations, you will see this RAG rated data, red, amber, green. I first got an inkling that this wasn't the right approach when I went to an Institute for Healthcare Improvement meeting, their annual meeting. They get 6,000 people there, all devoted to quality improvement. And it was lunchtime and it was sunny and you could go outside, yet 1,000 people had attended a program entitled No More Red, Amber, Green during their lunch, yes? And I think that really sort of showed how that RAG rating approach really does not resonate with what staff believe in. So you see the best organisations moving towards a type of statistical process control chart, which sounds very fancy, but actually is simply sort of data on a row. The same approach for everything. So everyone across the organisation uses the same approach for data. You can't have bar charts, pie charts, staggered by bar charts, X, Y, scattered. No, one approach. Everyone looks at it in the same way.
Is it something about simplifying the data then, in that regard?
Yes. So I think it's about everyone knowing that they're going to look at the data in the same way. And that's very difficult for NHS organisations. You have thousands of people wanting to do it their own way. You just have to have an agreement about that. Accreditation, I think, was one thing which came across. So having a sort of internal accreditation process so that you could recognise what was working in your own organisation, having a set of standards that you had set yourselves, and then you held people to account for.
And these would be a sort of self-set accreditation that we would then say, actually, we're holding ourselves open to this.
Yes. So the organisation will come up with their own standards, but then they will consistently apply that across the whole organisation. But of course, it's the variation across an organisation which can cause difficulties with quality. And then this sort of focus on leadership. The NHS has an unusual leadership style in which the top of the organisation has all the answers and they tell everybody else what to do and you're expected to follow. And when you look at how leadership operates in organisations which do this well in the report, you'll see that that is not their approach. They have a stable leadership. They help people develop their sort of quality leadership roles. They allow people further down the organisation to be making decisions. Their leaders are visible. Yeah, I know from my experience at East London towards the end, I learned to understand that actually I achieved far more than having one day a week, which I went out and just spoke to staff and heard what they had to say, rather than sitting in some boring governance meetings, sort of signing off sort of chart after chart after chart, which is sort of, it's a bit soul destroying really, and actually, more importantly, it doesn't achieve anything. And the importance of actually developing people's leadership skills as something that you really want. And finally, I think, engaging your staff. You really need your staff to be engaged in this. They really want to listen, they want to take part, they've got really good ideas, which the senior leadership in the organisation has to give them permission to act on. You don't have to go to the chief executive or the sort of clinical director just to make a sort of simple quality improvement measure. You should be allowed to sort of try that out yourself.
So I'm hearing a lot about empowerment there.
Yes, definitely. The best organisations, the organisations that we sort of showcased in the report, are ones which allowed their staff to get on with it. They didn't have to ask permission or to produce, I think in the worst case, organisations which require everybody to produce a business case before they can do anything, No, you don't need that. That's not what quality improvement is about.
Yeah. And there's something as well about recruitment and retention and the involvement with the local system in terms of the findings. Could you just expand on a couple of those themes?
So the best organisations will be seen as good places to work. So actually quality, having a really well-functioning quality improvement project actually really helps you retain your staff and attract staff to work with you. The best organisations, I think about how they recruit their staff, bearing in mind what their philosophy is around quality. So you have a values-based recruitment process, which I acknowledge can be difficult when you're sort of scrambling to find staff, and it is difficult to recruit staff. Nonetheless, if you recruit the right staff in the right way, in the right time, at the right place, your life becomes much easier. This is not simply putting an advert out on a newspaper or on a website and then expecting whoever turns up with the basic qualifications to be appointable to your organisation. The people you appoint should be sharing the values that you share, and so you therefore have to be able to assess that before you appoint.
So thinking creatively about recruitment, thinking about recruitment in the long term, the right people. Let's not just panic and get in staff. Let's think strategically about who we bring on board.
Oh, no, absolutely. Because if you make the wrong decisions, you'll spend a lot of unnecessary energy having to unpick them. Get it right first time.
Get it right first time.
Around recruitment.
And this piece about the local system and the involvement that each of these trusts have within their local areas. What about that bit?
So it's very important that your healthcare organisation, your trust, is not something separate from the rest of the community. You are there to serve the community. You are there to support the sort of wider health of the local population. You need to be working with your commissioners, schools, education, the wider system to make sure that that they understand why you're doing what you're doing, but also that you're not all working at cross purposes. That you're all focused on a similar goal. You're there. You're a public service. You're there to make the life of the population that you serve better.
Great, thank you, Kevin.
Thanks.
And Kevin Moynes, I'll come to you next. I just want to pick up some of the findings around this continuing focus on leadership, and it always seems that when we talk about topics like that, it always comes back to leadership. What's your view on this particular area of the report?
Well, clearly leadership is vital. I think I normally start with the evidence base, and there's a clear evidence base for leadership. And Kevin's mentioned the stability of the senior team and the execs is clearly one of those issues that we need to concentrate on. If you look at the evidence base around leadership, the biggest determinant of organisational success, whether it's within healthcare or outside healthcare, is leadership. And the biggest determinant of success in leadership is role modelling. And the biggest determinant of good role modelling is being authentic. And our staff can see people that are not authentic from 1,000 miles. So it's important that leadership is key and central, and it's not about creating more followers. The role of leaders is to create more leaders. I think sometimes you get a bit mixed up with that. I think for us, certainly at East Lancs, there was something about using frameworks. So, for example, you'll have heard of John Cotter that talks about creating a compelling vision.
He does the 8 steps to change.
He does. And the first one is creating a sense of urgency. And if you put into special measures and that doesn't create a sense of urgency, I'm not sure anything will, to be honest. So it's that creating urgency, compelling vision, and the biggest part is that compelling, what's you call it, coalition for change. Getting the right people around the table with you. We also needed a sort of framework to build on. We chose something called safe, personal, effective care. And we stole that from Salford, I'll be quite honest with you, so that staff can actually see what we're trying to achieve. And it actually changed our language in meetings, for example. So if we had a problem or we were trying to put a business case together, we could say things to each other like, that sounds very good, but I can't see how it's safer. Or that doesn't sound more personal, or is that as effective as it could be? So again, it was good about getting the research around it, the evidence base, and getting the right people around the table. It is absolutely key. And we brought in things like compassionate leadership. And again, a key behaviour in leadership is to be vulnerable. It is not a thing you should be ashamed of. To get chief execs and chairs saying, listen guys, I don't know what I'm doing with this, but can I have some help please? Is very, very great for staff, to be honest. And we talked about just culture in terms of being fair, and getting the key execs and chairman, etc., back to the floor so they could actually work alongside people that were doing the business for us.
Because some of these questions can be answered by colleagues around, right? So
Absolutely.
you don't have to be on your own as a leadership team. You can. It comes back to the empowerment.
Yeah. We've found that it's not really what the board says in terms of giving assurance. It's what the staff tell us is the biggest assurance. If the staff say things are getting better, the care's getting better, outcomes are getting better, that is far more assurance than anybody sitting around the board, in my view.
And Faye, your views on the leadership element?
So in terms of using Cambridge as the context, we had a slightly different, we've had slightly different experience. We went into financial special measures and requires improvement in 2015. And the response at that time was that PwC were called in, and our leadership style was very much heading towards grip and command and control. And then we had a new chief executive officer, Roland Sinker, and he came in and recognised, in fact, that we didn't have a lot of empowerment within the various layers of the organisation. It was very much led from the top, with arguably a rather disengaged workforce. And I always feel that the document Delivering People Improving Care was a bit of his manifesto. It's one of the first things he has done himself. Our Chief Nursing Officer and our Executive Director of Workforce have actually focused on leadership training, leadership development, but for people throughout the organisation. So we have a senior leaders program, which has now exposed over 250 of our senior leaders, and that's sort of band 8 and above, to a fantastic program led by the King's Fund and the Judge Business School from Cambridge University. And it's a 2-year program. Cohorts of 20 go through. They spend several days together, about 4 times a year. They build relationships. These are people from across the organisation, people who, for example, when I went on it, there was a radiographer. I wouldn't normally meet a radiographer necessarily. And we began to build these networks in that way. So we've had 8 cohorts of 20 staff. Right? No, it's more than that. It's 11 cohorts of 20 staff go through that so far over the last 3 years. So there's been a development program for matrons, for nurse leaders. We've focused very heavily on our equality and diversity training. So to really begin to figure out what sort of behaviours empower our staff, how do we give people permission, if you like, to lead in their areas, which certainly he felt was missing in our organisation. And that's contributed massively towards actually our improvement journey as well, because of course the behaviours that facilitate improvement are those that are ones that are absolutely being discussed and I suppose focused on as part of all the leadership work that we're doing.
So a lot of investment in the staff there, a lot of investment in leadership. And I suppose this comes down to what we were saying earlier in terms about the role modelling that you brought up, Kevin, about actually let's put the investment in here. Let's put the investment in the people where it's absolutely needed. Is that
absolutely right? I mean, it's a lot of time to let members out of the. The senior leaders program is something like 12 days a year, and that's not. We don't have to take leave for that or study leave for that. That is part of our job, and they're beginning to recognise that we need to do tailored programs for our new consultants. So that's just started, and that's been a very successful sort of 5-day intensive course that the cohorts of new consultants come through. We have leadership. Our divisional leadership consists of a nurse, a doctor, and a manager. There, we're developing a triumvirate leadership program for each division, in recognition that really right now it's incredibly challenging to lead within our context of the NHS. And that we need to ensure that behaviours that really facilitate an improvement or a sustainable improvement culture are being focused on, I suppose.
And just sticking with you for a moment, Faye, just about the quality improvement programs that you might have in place. Could you expand more about what you do at Cambridge?
Of course, absolutely. So this is part of the same story, really. After we went into special measures, there was a huge focus on the development of our quality and safety directorate, and they worked with the Eastern academic health science network, particularly around methodology. You talked about methodology earlier, Kevin, and they embraced the model for improvement, the Institute for Healthcare Improvement Methodology, and they both looked at how we investigate safety incidents, how we think about how do we learn from them, how do we disseminate the learning from such things in a very supportive way. They began a program called Fundamentals of QI, Quality Improvement, which was sort of a one-day course to expose staff to what that might look like. And then that moved on. Again, Roland Sinker, our Chief Executive Officer, and the board decided what we really needed was an Executive Director of Improvement and Transformation. And that was 2 years ago that was Ewan Cameron, he was appointed. And then I was appointed about 21 months ago into the clinical director role. So we sit outside the Directorate for Quality. We actually effectively sit within finance with the Programme Management Office and the Improvement and Transformation team. We work together. And it has been mine and my colleague Debbie Morgan, who's the Director of Service Improvement and Transformation, to actually take forward our organisation's approach to how do we introduce and embed continuous improvement in a sustainable way. So how have we done that? Well, first of all, we've done a lot of talking to people. We've thought about our own methodology, which is also model for improvement. We've built capability in our own team because we didn't have that capability. But we are an organisation of 11,000 staff. Debbie and I did a huge amount of work looking at what the options were if you really wanted to think about organisational culture change, recognising that that's a 5 to 10 year journey. We looked at doing it ourselves and we looked at working with another organisation. And after sort of 21 months, we have actually just signed up to the Institute for Healthcare Improvement to work with them in a partnership to co-produce, if you like, our way of moving the organisation to a continuous and sustainable improvement culture. And they begin with us in April, so we're very excited by that.
You know, an organisation of 11,000 people to sort of embark on a programme like that of big cultural transformation, that's pretty big, right? How do you work across such an organisation to make that happen?
Well, the literature says you start at the top, doesn't it? And that's what we've done. So there's a fantastic document by the Health Foundation called The Improvement Journey. So anybody who actually wants to know how to do it, just read that. It does use East London Foundation Trust as one of their exemplars, but it also uses Western Sussex, which is, some of you may know, uses Lean. It uses gives an example of how Leeds moved themselves forward. I can't remember the other two, but it just describes the sort of various phases of taking an organisation from the very beginning, where you just look at your readiness, what's the gap, and right through to sort of deliver the challenges, if you like, for delivering sustainable improvement. So we've done that. We didn't feel that, considering the fact that we live in an atmosphere of continuous firefighting, that we did not have the headspace to be able to sit back, hold a mirror up to our organisation and say, we can do this. We all agreed, our board, management executive agreed that was not going to be possible. So then it was, right, okay, who should we partner with? We wrote a tender, which we took on this year. And as I say, the Institute for Healthcare Improvement were our successful partners. But there's been an enormous amount of work, first of all, to try and work with our senior leaders to understand what that feels like, because everyone had to support it. So, it's an investment. There's no money around. Our system is, you're probably aware, under the most pressure in the whole of the UK, and our trust has the second largest debt. So for us to commit the investment, particularly when we're not buying equipment, the choice is not to buy equipment, etc., etc. These are really very challenging decisions to make. But thankfully, I suppose, I feel thankful anyway, the organisation looked to the future and how do we think about future-proofing our system, understanding the way our demographics are heading, which in our case anyways is an ageing population and a population increasing in size. And also, Addenbrooke's 3, the government has announced that we'll fund a new hospital. We know we can't keep doing things the same way, that we have to think about how we care for people in a different way. And we're also very conscious of the evidence that says if you use an improvement approach, which is rapid cycles, small tests of change, iterative changes, with an appreciation that healthcare is a complex adaptive system and you can't just impose change on a complex adaptive system, that we need to think about using improvement and doing it well to really build our future for our system.
And Kevin Moynes, from that, I'm hearing long-term approach, quality improvement projects, quality improvement approach for long-term.
Absolutely. And if you don't mind me saying, Faye, the passion that you're speaking about, it's really great stuff, isn't it? I mean,
I love it. It's me.
You can
it's
see
just me.
Your whole body language, you can see. It's wonderful to see. I mean, it's so liberating for staff. If you look at organisational development, one of the best tools you've got is you said, we did, and it's part of that.
Exactly right.
So when they're looking at things, problems that we didn't think could be solved in theatres, outpatients, hire to retire, whatever you look at, the staff really, really want this. And if you go into organisations and you say to them, do you think quality improvement's important? Oh yes. And I go, well, can I speak to your director of quality improvement, please? Oh, we haven't got one of those. We've got lots of training going on then. Oh, we're thinking about that. It's got to be real, and I'd say to you that in terms of longevity, if you're not going to continue this, do not start it, because it's very difficult to start these things over and over again because staff think you don't mean it this time. And that's why the stability is important. It's a circular argument. They need to look at boards that are stable, think these guys are going to be in it for the long term. They're not going to give us something fancy and then move on to something else. It's really important to embed it, keep on it consistent.
It's not the sort of thing where you get an idea, you think this is a good thing to do, initial launch, and then forget about
Absolutely.
it. If you launch it, if you're going to do it, you've got to do it.
It's not a fad, because if it is, the staff will see straight through it.
Well, they've seen through all the 25 other fads that we've gone through.
Yes.
And even my colleagues, when I speak to them, I have a lot, I know a lot of people in the organisation. I've been there on and off since 1993, and they'll still say to me, this is just another one. I said, no, this is different. But then, I'm at some, it matters. But I like you say, for me, improvement is about people coming to work and being able to improve the work and knowing that they'll be heard. And it's recognising that the people who do the work know what the problems are and actually have ideas to solve them, because that's where I've been. That's where I've been.
And when you think about it, people around this table, the only thing that we can do at this level that most staff can't is to change and move resources and people. And you're saying to our staff, tell us where to put it. That's sort of the leader as servant. We're here to serve you guys. Tell us where you want to put the resources and our time and our effort. And 9 times, that's the basis of Lane, is it not? They know better than any of us in reality.
And Kevin Cleary, coming back to you from a CQC point of view, when you hear Faye and Kevin talk with such passion about this area, what's going through your mind?
So it's really inspirational, I have to say. It's always great to hear from leaders working in NHS Trusts about their improvement journey and being open and honest about some of the difficulties you face when you start this work, because it is difficult. You will end up having difficult conversations at the senior level of the organisation, because you do have to have everybody agreed that you can take this approach, and that took us, I think, East London about 9 months to a year before we had everyone lined up. There's the issue of the methodology. So different organisations use a different methodology. It doesn't matter which methodology you use, but what is important is that the methodology you choose resonates with your staff. Because if it doesn't resonate with your staff values, then you're going to find it very difficult. You saw a lot of organisations seizing on lean as their approach, because I think lean sounds nice. It sounds like you're going to save money and be more efficient, and you are, but your staff have to be really signed up to that approach, or else they're going to think, here we go again, as Faye said, it's another fad. And it's also getting staff to believe that their job is to come to work to do their job and to improve the work that they're doing. And I think we don't always see that expectation in all organisations that we go out to. So we're always really heartened when we see a really good quality improvement process properly embedded in an organisation.
I suppose you can tell it's embedded when people are speaking about it, all different layers of the organisation.
You go out to a ward, you talk to the staff, and they can tell you about what they're doing in relation to improvement. That's when you know that actually it's truly embedded.
We'll now be hearing from the other trust who have featured in the report. They talk a bit about their journeys and also share their top tips for trusts either to improve or to sustain their improvement.
Good morning, I'm Anita Lewin, the Director of Nursing, Allied Health Professionals and Quality here at Lincolnshire Partnership NHS Foundation Trust. I've been asked as part of this podcast to give one top tip to other trusts looking to improve or sustain their improvement. I've given this a great deal of serious thought, and actually the one top tip I would give is around staff engagement. I don't think that can be underestimated. It's imperative that our staff feel listened to. It's imperative that they feel that they have the freedom to act. And that has been our biggest achievement. That has been the biggest change in Lincolnshire Partnership Foundation Trust. You go onto any of our clinical services and our corporate services, and staff talk with pride about their achievements of that week, that month, that year, and that shines through. I'm a nurse, and I've been a nurse for 34 years. Most of that time, in fact all of that time, has been in Lincolnshire Partnership Foundation Trust in many iterations. So I truly can say how I've seen this trust go on its journey from requires improvement to good, and our next journey to outstanding. I've been a member of this organisation in various guises. I've managed various services, and have implemented fantastic new initiatives and have worked with the staff that have led us to get to this fantastic place that we are now. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how our journey has taken place to get us from requires improvement to good, outstanding for well led, and more importantly, how we are managing to sustain that journey. We were very lucky to be asked to be part of these case studies, and I think that's a reflection on how far the organisation has come in the last 4 years. In 2015, we had a report that was really not a very pleasant place to be, and as a board and as a team of staff, we had to reflect on what was being told to us. So I think it was important at that stage to note that actually was listened to by everybody, and that made us reach a place where we had to sit down and work out exactly where the organisation was and what we needed to do to take it to the place that it is today. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that journey that we've been on. I think one of the biggest pieces of work we did at the beginning was take part in a leadership diagnostic, and we had to do a piece of work that we interviewed all of our staff and said, just tell us how it is to work in this organisation and to be part of this organisation. I think one of the biggest things to note is the board, and I wasn't a member of the board at that time, but I was a member of staff of the organisation. And one of the biggest things was the feedback and what staff were saying was listened to. There was no kind of, well, that's not right. There was no arguing about the content of the diagnostic. Actually, everybody took it on the chin and sat down and said, right, we need to make this a better place to work. And we've set out on a journey that is 4 years long now, that has taken us to the place that we're in today. We continue to not sit back on our laurels. Only in the last week we've heard that yet again we've had an excellent staff survey, which goes from strength to strength, which shows that this piece of work that we've done is sustained, and I think that's the critical piece of work, and certainly for this CQC work that we're talking about, is how we've managed to sustain that. One of the pieces of work that we also did, we spoke about developing our people, and we spoke about making them proud of what they've achieved and what they have done with their services. In previous CQC inspections, up until the improvements from 2016, staff would wait to be done to. They would wait for the inspections and almost go into them in a victim-like mode. So we did a huge piece of work to get staff to talk about what was good about their services, the bits they were proud of, everything that they'd achieved, and actually they opened doors to the CQC coming in to inspect them. They wanted to talk about everything that they'd achieved, and actually their pride shone through. And I'll come on later in the podcast to the work we've done about kind of assurance, because it's obviously not all good. We have areas for improvement and we have areas that we need to work on, and it can't all be all the good stuff. But I think from the first place, it was about getting staff to talk with passion about the patient care and the patient experience and the pieces of work that were truly important to them. In 2015, one of the biggest shocks was that it came to light that potentially the executive team and other members of senior management in Lincolnshire Partnership Foundation Trust didn't know some of the things that were going on in the organisation. And one of the pieces of work that we've done about is that we allowed staff to speak out without feeling there was blame. We allowed staff to escalate when there were concerns that they were raising, and actually escalate to a team that were prepared to take action on their behalf. When they were feeling frustrated, when they were feeling doors were closed, it was imperative that we allowed those doors to be open and use our position as executives sometimes to unlock some of those doors. We speak about we have a no blame culture, and at times that, to some people that can feel just words. We actually truly do have a no blame culture. We've given staff permission to try. We've given staff permission to say, actually, this isn't working, we're going to stop this, without any fear of repercussions, without any fear of how am I going to tell people this hasn't worked. And the biggest thing from that, and the biggest achievement from that, is as an executive team, we have no surprises. We know where our areas of concern are. We talk quite openly in board meetings and with our council of governors and with all of the stakeholders about our areas of concern. But more importantly, we talk about our responsiveness. We talk about what we're doing to address them, and we address them as a team. It truly is a ward to board and community team to board approach to these pieces of work. I think it's to be noted, and we talk about sustainability of that move. Over the last 12 to 14 months, we've had a huge amount of turnover in Lincolnshire Partnership Foundation Trust. That's both at board level and within senior positions of our clinical services. I've spoken about our staff survey. I've spoken about the recent feedback we've had in the last 3 weeks concerning our staff survey, which once again has continued to improve. And I think that is as a result of the fact that our values and the work we have done are truly embedded and is at the heart of everything that we do, and therefore the behaviour and the values we are very close to our hearts are embedded with everybody new coming into the organisation. They're all there for all to see. We have people externally that come in for interviews, and one of the first things that is often fed back is the feel of Lincolnshire Partnership Foundation Trust, and that's very hard to put into words, but actually it's a good place to work, and I think that cannot be underestimated. Our staff are happy, they report being happy. We have the same pressures as everybody else. We have staffing shortages. We see an increasing demand every day. But on the whole, we're managing that together, and I think that's really very important. I've spoken about the vision and values, and I've spoken about the diagnostic work that we did. But actually, as a result of that, we then, as an organisation, did set out a new set of values for LPFT and what they would look like. That was true co-production with the staff. And I've spoken about it, but actually I cannot underestimate just how embedded they are. And I think that's incredibly important. Another piece of work that's happened over the last 4 years, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit now, and I actually cannot underestimate the importance of this, is around communications and engagement with your staff. Our communications department in Lincolnshire Partnership Foundation Trust is truly outstanding, and it's very difficult. Here in Lincolnshire, we're very rural. We don't have one motorway. It's all a challenge for us. You don't get anywhere very fast, and actually being the face of a visible executive team when you've got 60 sites over an incredibly difficult landscape is not easy. So with our comms and engagement team, we've worked incredibly hard to kind of work our way round that and find ways to still reach out to staff constantly. So we have an e-bulletin every week where kind of key headlines from everything that's going on is shared. We have a video team brief that is kind of sent out to the masses so they all get to see that. But we do have regular executive team visits. We do have regular visits with our non-executive colleagues. And our staff report that we are an incredibly visible team. And sometimes it's just doing our job, but doing it in a different location. It's not always about having the great royal visit from the executive. It's just about if you're going to hot desk in with the clinical teams, just do your job, but do it in a different location. It certainly makes you more accessible. We talk about staff engagement, and I think prior to our improvement journey, staff engagement was probably just words that we used. We truly do it, staff engagement now. We've been incredibly successful as an organisation over the last 12 months with investment in our services. And staff have been engaged in the development of those new services from day one. And that's paid dividends. Staff report that they feel fully involved, and actually their voice isn't just a tokenistic, we'll tick a box. They're involved in every step of the way. The services are developed by the staff. I think it's important, and I've spoken a lot on our values and our visions, but we obviously as an organisation, we have to seek assurance on what is happening, and I think that's very good. We moved to a place of devolved accountability. We have regular accountability reviews with our clinical divisions. And we've done a huge amount of work around our governance processes. So our clinical divisions have their own internal governance processes. We've made our reporting structures much slicker. We've moved away from a huge paper-driven board meetings. We have SPC charts that are fully embedded. So we're actually making sure that we discuss the real issues. Quality improvement is at the heart of everything that we've kind of achieved over the last 4 years at Lincolnshire Partnership Foundation Trust. It started with trust-wide projects which were led by executives, simply so that the staff would see how that could work and what that could mean. We've now moved to a place where quality improvement is embedded in all 4 of our large clinical divisions. We've invested in quality leads within each of those clinical divisions, and they lead the quality improvement work with their staff. But actually it truly is at the heart of what is done every day within Lincolnshire Partnership Foundation Trust.
Hi, I'm Peter Axon, Chief Executive Officer here at North Staffordshire Combined Healthcare NHS Trust. I've been at Combined Healthcare since April 2019, and before that was for a number of years Finance Director and Deputy Chief Executive at a community foundation trust. For a short period, I was also Chief Executive of another mental health trust within the Midlands region. I'm originally from Stoke-on-Trent, having spent my first 22 years growing up in the city. So the opportunity to work back in the area that I grew up in, with services that I'm absolutely passionate about, was something that I really couldn't turn down. My current role as Chief Executive gives me the opportunity to be involved in all aspects of the running of the Trust, from the development of the Trust's strategy through to discussions on a daily basis with individuals and teams that provide frontline clinical services. The Trust works within the Staffordshire Health and Social Care system, and within that footprint I am the lead for the Organisational Development and Leadership Programme and also oversee the Mental Health System Programme. Both are privileged roles to carry out and ensure that I work with internal and external partners in equal measure. So, how has the CQC Sustaining Improvement Programme helped us at Combined Healthcare? Well, it has provided our Trust with the opportunity to document our journey from the Trust being rated as required improvement a few years ago to our current rating of outstanding. Taking the time out to describe in our own words how this has been achieved has been a really cathartic exercise for the team at Combined. It has also provided us with a clearer understanding of the key attributes that enabled us to successfully complete our journey. I would say that the programme has reminded us of the problems that would quickly arrive should we become complacent. Throughout our journey, we have embarked on a number of quality improvement initiatives, which have individually improved our performance and service quality. But more broadly, it is perhaps people's ambition and desire to take on board new quality initiatives that has been our greatest asset. Having immersed myself in the Trust over the past year, above all, it has reminded me that a can-do positive culture is the biggest asset that an organisation can have when embarking on an improvement journey.
So moving on to a different topic, and it's clear that being involved with the local system is key for sustaining improvement as well. And Kevin, I'll start. Kevin Moynes, I'll start with you. Can you give us an idea of what your trust does to make sure it's an active partner in the local system that you operate in?
Yes, certainly. This is a key area for the trust. I think we've come to the conclusion that you probably can't have a fantastic trust in an imperfect system. I think the system's got to work as one. So we come to the conclusion that if it's good for the trust, it's good for the system, and vice versa. So we're looking at things like co-production of most things, even meetings, agendas. Can we put joint research bits together, joint business cases together? Can we put joint job descriptions where people can work across boundary together? Could we set up new roles, for example, healthcare workers, social workers or whatever. That's good for, they can cross boundaries across local authorities from the trust, etc. So we're trying to work together as a system. It's not easy, it's early days, but I think there's a genuine want from us all as key leaders to make this stuff work. And we clearly want to be part of that. But I think co-production is important. I think the key skills, again, back into leadership, is not about competition, it's about collaboration, and it's about working together. I think people that have been brought up in an era, as I have in reality, it's all about competing with other trusts, competing with other partners, those days are done. And I think if you haven't got the skill set to work collaboratively, it's going to be a hard road ahead for you.
Sounds like building relationships and it's getting
trust,
to know people.
It's trust, It's sometimes you don't want to get into anything that's combative. Joint resources, understanding each other's budgets, open book term they use, so that there's no surprises. It's not clever to sit round a table with your partners and surprise them with anything. It's not a game here. We're trying to improve the outcomes of patients across the country. This is real stuff.
We're all aiming for the same thing.
Indeed. Outcomes is how we'll be measured in terms of people living longer, living happier.
And Faith, from your perspective?
So the way, so our system is Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, CCG. Our hospital has got very involved with that, to the point that our Chief Executive Officer, Roland, is in fact the responsible officer for the STP, and our Chairman, Mike Moore, is in fact the Chairman of it. So we're right in the thick of it. We have a Executive Director of Strategy, Nicola Ayton, who's really led on all the system partnership work, and that's included working with our GP practices as they've evolved into primary care networks. We have had a big piece of work done by McKinsey on the sort of a system, and they've identified sort of 4 priority areas that we should actually be attending to in particular, including diabetes. And again, so therefore, in terms of the team that I'm part of our work is actually focusing on looking at end-to-end pathways that start in the system, go through the trust and end up back in the system, and not viewing the patient's sort of spell of care as the one that starts at the front door of the hospital and finishes at the back door of the hospital, if you like. So we've got quite a lot of work ongoing. We've had some very good work for our stroke team, stroke and rehab, and that's been going on actually for nearly 2 or 3 years. Also MSK. And the diabetes pathway is that sort of work's been coming in fits and starts, but it's certainly a focus of how do we try and bring everything together for the benefit of patients in particular.
And Kevin Cleary, from a CQC perspective again, why is it important for trusts to be such an active partner in the local system?
So healthcare is changing. Our thoughts about how healthcare should operate is changing. It's no longer the case that there is an acute trust here, a mental health trust here, there's primary care over there, and each of them are operating independently of each other, pointing the finger at each other for sort of not delivering in some aspects. And then there's the local authority doing their thing, and education doing its thing, and then criminal justice doing its thing. That just results in a completely fragmented relationship where trust just gets dissipated. Yes, you stop beginning to trust the people that you're supposed to be working with. It requires a completely different approach. And you will see in the very best healthcare systems in the world, organisations are truly integrated in their working and are delivering the best health outcomes. It is not for Cambridge by itself to deliver excellent health outcomes for the population it serves. It's for each of the partners to have a role to play in a coordinated way, sharing the same language, behaving appropriately and supporting the local population.
And finally, and Kevin, I'll stick with you on this one, but if you could give one top tip to other trusts looking to either improve or sustain their improvement, what would that be?
I would say that you cannot quality assure your way to excellence. If you want to deliver truly excellent care, you have to focus on a quality improvement methodology approach to make things better. You can't rag rate your way to excellence. I can assure you of that.
And Faye, what's your top tip?
Oh, I've got more than one top tip actually.
More than one is perfectly fine.
There are more than one. So because there's a very good article in the Financial Times looking at how successful organisations transform, and I was reading that. And I think the answer lies there. First of all, it's listen to your staff. If you, in the case of our staff, they really need to understand what improvement is. So explain what is changing and why from the top. This is a very important role for senior leaders in the organisation. And like Kevin said, senior leaders need to role model behaviour. You need to find the influencers, energise them, sign them up, and then plan how your progress will be measured, monitored, reported, and importantly, celebrated. So measurement over time is the only way whether you're really going to tell whether there's an improvement. And if you're not making an improvement, stop. Adopt it. If it's not working, don't adopt it. Abandon it. And if you take your learning so you can adapt it. But these are really key things that we don't do. We just try something and then forget to evaluate it.
Great. And Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about this all day. I think there's something around find ways in your day to find stuff to say thank you to.
Yeah.
You know, recognise and reward them. The other thing is find more opportunities to have face-to-face. Forget the emails. We've all tried the no email Wednesdays and all that stuff. It doesn't work. Get out of your seat, out of your office and go and see these guys. And thirdly, understand the context in which they work. And I think I've written down here, it sounds dead good, this, be kind, be fair, be there. And I think that's what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone, Kevin and Faye. Thanks for your time today, and thank you everyone for listening to CQC Connect. If you haven't already read it, you can see the full report on our website, and we'll link it also into the podcast information.